Hello, this is Faith at House Fraud Homestead. We're going to have a conversation here, and I am not going to edit it or censor it or script it in any way because I'm finding that I need to strike when the inspiration iron is hot and not try to worry about production value and editing and scripting and putting makeup on and trying to curate my voice in such a way that I'm relevant. So there will be themes of discussion probably as I start to ramble, but this is basically going to be a study in imperfection and the ways in which what you see is not always all of reality. And a case in point here is this dome. This is one of the more aesthetic angles. It's not very aesthetic in here right now, but it's a bit of a shit show. I just had the pig busting in here like the Kool-Aid man trying to interrupt this video, but this is a season of embracing imperfection for me, and a lot of that has looked like not pushing through ways in which I'm not, in my opinion, measuring up. If you've seen any of my videos, you know that I'm coming from and deconstructing a lot of diligence and work ethic baggage and needing to be, as part of my identity, very type A and together and on top of everything and organized and perfect. And that has introduced so much friction to my existence and my expression that I'm really trying to get away from that. And that's hard to do. On a recent plant medicine journey, I realized the degree to which I really want to share my insights and my perspective of the world, but I have made it requisite to my expression that I be relevant, that I find a way to say the right thing at the right time to the right person and need to be needed in that way. And on this plant medicine journey, I was basically told by another person I was with to shut up and let them think, and nicer than that. But my takeaway on this substance was, if I'm not relevant, I should just die. And that's a little overdramatic in retrospect, but it really got me thinking about the ways in which, especially with the attention economy, we've made it this imperative to find a target audience and reduce connection to this marketing campaign. And the only ways in which we can connect with each other are if we are selling each other something, like identifying someone as lacking something we have and almost foisting it on them, like convincing them they need it. And that has never sat well with me. That's never been something I wanted to do, and that's been a friction point lately as I've been trying to escape the rat race in some ways. Like, I have a job that I can sort of sustain, but I like to believe that at some point I could homestead and homemake full time. That's what I'd like to do. But there's just this imperative to be relevant, and you can't just create. You can't just be on your own schedule. You have to be on a creation schedule. And like, creation schedule is such a friggin' oxymoron to me. Like, that's not how the creative process goes. And so I've been struggling lately with, if I'm not relevant, why create at all? And what I've come to realize is that if you're authentic, you don't need to force relevance. Somewhere out there is someone who will resonate with your message, and it will find them in its own time, and you don't have to, I don't have to, maybe you do, hopefully you don't either, insist on your message being received by one person at one particular time when it might not be relevant to them. And so I think I've correctly identified for myself that imperative to be relevant and to produce on a schedule and to be what people want me to be in my mind did feel slimy because it's not authentic to me. So the way in which I want to create now is off the cuff. not worried about production value and setting up a tripod and putting on makeup and doing all these things that introduce friction to the creative flow. I don't like editing. I tried editing. I tried setting everything up and making a big production out of it, and what I found was I just didn't want to do it because I introduced so much friction to the creative process that it wasn't even worth doing anymore. So I'm hoping, and I keep saying, I keep having this bad habit of making promises where I hope for something. And that is a pattern I've had forever. I have always been someone who offers consolation commitments when I feel like I'm disappointing somebody. So when I feel like I'm disappointing my audience, all 230 of you, I tell myself that I need to promise you something else if I haven't delivered to my standards or the standards I project on you. And I'm not going to do that this time. I don't know when or if I'm going to feel like creating something or if it's going to be good or worth watching. And that's a forbidden comment for a content creator to make, but I'm tired of this tyranny of the attention economy and having to reduce your personhood to a brand. Like, if I am authentic to myself and what I feel like creating in any given moment, it's not going to be all homestead and homemaking relevance. A lot of stuff I want to talk about is just things that are on my mind, ways in which I'm pondering something. And that's also something I get hung up about because, like, in my mind, I have a lot of limiting beliefs around entrepreneurship and making yourself into a marketable commodity. I don't like it on principle, for one thing, but also the notion of like a life coach. Like, if you are not like an 80-year-old senpai on a hill kind of thing, I feel like you have no business selling life advice to people. No offense to life coaches, but I enjoy giving advice and being relevant, but I think that's an ego thing. And it's hard for me to feel like I could make money off of something that I feel like I would like to do for free. So that's one of my hang-ups lately, is just the way in which I want to be of value, and I'm turning that into needing to be relevance and forcing value on people. And to get around that, I'm still trying to figure that out. A lot of it is just letting the imperfection be visible. Like, I've had a huge hang-up lately with hosting in a state of imperfection in my house. And that was something I was going to make a video about, but then I'm like, oh, I have an imperfect house. I can't make a video about my imperfect house. So the irony of that is palpable. But what I'm finding is that if we focus on restoring a sense of community in the quote-unquote audience, the people we feel like we have to perform for, and we let them see the rawness and the nakedness and the imperfection, what we're doing is giving people permission to be raw and naked and imperfect. And you can connect with people so much more deeply that way when you have ceased this vicious cycle of performative perfection. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. That's what I'm trying to do in the rest of my life in this fallow season right now, where I'm not really very productive, I'm not really very inspired, and I think that's seasonally appropriate. Like, this is my first full winter off of birth control as a more or less whole person, and I am feeling the biological imperative to hibernate. And that is so counter to our culture of hustle and consume and produce for the holidays. I haven't felt like decorating. I felt a should. I have felt a should to produce and consume and purchase and perform Christmas, but it's just not important to me. So I've had to audit what is important to me. What would I like in this holiday season? And for me, that looked like I wanted to have a friend over and make friggin' popcorn and cranberry garlands. So that's what we did, and it was lovely. In my imperfect house, we had chips and crackers and just sat for 3 hours and made popcorn and cranberry garlands, and it was great. And I'm trying to, with this channel being, a self-purported homemaking channel, I tell myself that I need to be those things. I need to be in some ways archetypal in order to have any kind of platform here. I need to have my shit together in order to be any kind of prescriptive. And I certainly do not. Like, this is not evidence of having one shit together. This was me planting tomatoes before I had a trellis up. Never do that. I'm learning that slowly. Every year I do that. But it's not sustainable. And I think if we're going to be, or if I'm going to be rather, deconstructing homemaking and those modes of connection and providing non-monetary value from a more ecological lens and mental and physical health stability and sanity kind of lens, then the example I need to set is embracing imperfection and letting the imperfection be known. It can be judged. That's anyone else's prerogative. I judge it myself sometimes, but I think the only way out of this attention economy that's any kind of sustainable is to reflect reality. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. So that's why I put the fraud in house fraud, because there are many ways in which I don't fit that mold. I'm not Christian. I don't have children. I don't keep a perfect house. I don't keep a perfect homestead. I'm on a quarter acre in town. It's not really a homestead. Like, there are many ways in which I'm disqualified from offering any kind of prescriptive advice. But people keep telling me that when I just run my mouth, sometimes stuff comes out that they get value out of. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to reduce this friction that I've introduced to perform and be something specific. Because there's a book I'm reading right now called The Kindred Life by Christine Marie Bailey, I think her name is. I might be butchering it. But I'm not very far in. But the premise is creating community around you. And letting go of the imperative to host and to put on some kind of production, and how hospitality is in some ways just creating a sense of welcome without necessarily trying to impress anybody. And one of the first chapters talked about having a song. And so I'm trying to, as corny as it sounds, sing my song at the expense of having a brand. And sometimes that's going to vary seasonally. That's going to vary depending on what I'm doing, what I'm inspired by. And if you want to be along for the ride, that's just what I'm going to start doing, because I enjoy just running my mouth about what I'm interested in. That's neurodivergence for you. I like to info dump. And who am I to say what is valuable about what I run my mouth about? That's not for me to decide. That's not for me to curate according to. That's wildly outside my locus of control to say I need to censor myself in these ways because these aren't relevant to anybody. Like, I don't know. There's 7 billion people in this world. Who knows what's relevant to who? This could reach somebody who needs something wildly different than I thought was important. Or it could be important to no one. And it was important to me to run my mouth today. So that's fine too. But I'm really trying to just reduce friction in as many ways as possible for myself and live organically. And I realize the immense fucking privilege that is. Like, I would not be able to do any of this if I didn't have people in my life who adhered to the rat race structure and not necessarily bankrolled my existence, but like my husband is a rock in our house in terms of stability and time management and all the things that I'm not. And I've let it be complementary at this point. I used to compete with him in that way. Like, I felt like I had to be the most anal type A person in the house. And letting that go has helped me appreciate him so much more because I chose him in some ways, and all the people in my life I've chosen for things that they bring to me, and if I let those be a gift and not a thing that I need to make myself into, then they are relevant to me and they are valuable to me, and I don't have to perform, a competition with them. I think so often when we get into friction with people, it's because we see their good qualities as in competition with ours. So I'm trying to let go of that. I'm trying to, like, I have a couple new friends who make more money than me, and they're lovely. And I very much enjoy spending time with them, but that impulse in me to make it a competition is rearing its ugly head. Like, their house is nicer than ours. He's a cocktail wizard kind of person. I'm neither of those things. And if I let myself believe that I have to have a house at their level and make cocktails like he does, I'm robbing them of the opportunity to share something with me that they want to share with me. And that's stupid. So I'm really trying to get over that. And it's vulnerable. It is very, very fucking vulnerable to let people see the ways in which you feel inadequate. And there are a lot of ways in which I still feel inadequate, especially as I'm coming into this fallow season where I'm not on as much. The Protestant work ethic interior monologue of how dare you sit down when there's anything to be done is very strong in this season when I realistically have several days of work to achieve stasis and perfection, and I am not feeling like it needs to happen right now. Like, I just pulled up my sweet potatoes yesterday, and I'm trying to, like, I have told myself for months that I'm going to take a full weekend and just gut this whole greenhouse and tear all of last season's plants out and get this clusterfuck back here organized. And it's not going to happen all in one day because that is too much friction for my neurodivergent little ping pong brain. So I came out and I harvested my sweet potatoes and I figured out something to do with them, and that was manageable for me. So what is manageable for me is not always exciting or performative or what I feel like is worthy of attention or appreciation or counting as a valid use of my time. And that is just consumerism, capitalism rearing its ugly head. And if you think about how our ancestors would have existed, a lot of the chores would have been done in community, and they would have been done when they needed to be done, and then you would have sat around and, kept company with each other. Like, survival is hard work, but it's not a lot of work. Like, the bare necessities of life, to risk a copyright infringement, are not performative. Like, there's no prize for surviving the longest. You just, you get to the finish line last. So, I guess what all that is to say, I'm not trying to impress anybody anymore, or at least not consciously. And I'm really hoping that means I can just bring something to you all and to the other people in my life that is authentic. And if it happens to be valuable, cool, but I'm trying to find the meaning in it for me, because that's the only thing I have in my locus of control. It is meaningful to me to run my mouth and to speak into existence these things that rattle around in my head all day. I used to do it on paper. I'm finding a bigger inclination now to do it verbally. And that's just something I need to do for me. And if someone else gets value out of it, cool. But that's kind of where I'm going in this new year, hopefully, is just when the iron is hot, I strike with whatever's on my mind and I put it out there, and it finds who it's going to find. And if it's not relevant, it's not relevant, and that's okay. I am so over this imperative to be a creator as part of your identity, and to be a brand, and to be relevant, and to fish for attention from somebody, and to need someone to affirm you in that way. And I think that's human. I think it's human to want someone to see you, but you're not letting somebody see you. I wasn't letting somebody see me when everything I present is from this very curated angle of nothing is wrong in my life. I'm the authority. And I'm not. I'm 31 fucking years old. I have had maybe a third of a life worth of life experience. I am not qualified to tell anyone to do shit. So this is just me figuring myself out in a public forum, which is what I'm inclined to do. And if anyone gets value or inspiration, or even like my mother used to say, if you can't be a good example, be a horrible warning, and boy, howdy was she. So if I'm a horrible warning to people, then cool, that's still value. I'm not qualified to dictate the value that people get from me. So I think that's the extent of my rant for the day. I'm sure there's more that I'm going to want to share later, but then that can be another video. It doesn't all have to be included and branded and titled and sorted. Like, I think an organic stream of thought can be revisited. So there might be more to this, there might not. This is just what I felt like saying today, and I hope somebody gets something out of it. I wish you all a comfortable holiday season as much as possible. I'm not going to tell myself I'm going to make a video about it, because then I'll make it into an expectation and my demand avoidance will kick in. But I know this time of year for people can be fraught, especially if you are estranged from family or from your roots in some ways. I've been dealing with that as well. And, the recovery spiral, and as much as I don't regret that estrangement, it's still something to revisit every year as, was it worth it? Was it worth disconnecting yourself from your roots? And for me, it was. That doesn't mean it's not painful. And so we're trying this year to build a longer table for people who have been ejected from theirs. We'll see how that goes. But that goes back to needing to be relevant again. I got up in my head about the fact that we didn't get a lot of takers for our orphan Christmas that I wanted to put on. And that's okay. Like, if part of having an open door is not dragging people through it. Like, there's an element of flexibility and grace you have to keep a door open and not expect anyone to show up. So that's what I'm trying to exercise, is grace with myself and with these people, where the door is open if they want somewhere to go on Christmas, and if they are happy with their families, that's not a problem. God, that's not a problem. And if I make that a problem, then I am forcing my relevance on top of someone else's circumstances, and that's not fair to them. Like, the metaphor that came through for this relevance question for me was the outer coating on a seed, like the husk of a seed, needs to know when to fall away to let something grow. And if it clings to relevance, if it clings to being useful, it eventually smothers the life that it's nurturing. And so I think part of the feminine element, at least for me, is knowing when what you're nurturing needs you to step the fuck back from it and let it grow and let it self-actualize and not feel like you have to be the authority on what they should do. I think that's a very easy trap to fall into when you care about something, is to need to feel needed. And so I'm trying to let go of that. And that gives you a lot of freedom, which is kind of scary. But sometimes when you let go of this need to be relevant, you find that you're relevant to somebody else or something else. Something else is relevant to you. And I'm just very in a state now of letting things fall off that are no longer relevant, including myself. And just letting things go and not clinging. And I think when you stop clinging, you are left with so much more peace and not even energy, but just a state of relaxation. And you have to be in a state of trust to do that. You have to be oriented to something else will come to fill my arms if I let this thing go. It might not be the same thing. There are people I hope that I've helped that I need to not tell myself I have to help on an ongoing basis, because then they are limited by my level of understanding, and that's not fair to them. So I think part of being a good influence is letting yourself be outgrown. And I hope that I'm outgrown. Like, I used to consume a lot of narcissism content. That's telling, right? But there's, I think some content creators and schools of thought are appropriate to you at one time or place in your journey. And if you cling to them and you form parasocial relationships with these people who speak to a specific level of development, you end up not growing past that level of understanding. I think a lot of content creators, in trying to be relevant, don't grow and don't let their audience grow with them or away from them. or apart from them. So I want to encourage, I guess, for myself and others, that if something's not relevant in this season of life, let it go. Like, there's no loyalty to something that's not serving you. And it might serve you later, it might not serve you later, but there's a lot of things that I've outgrown that I kept around longer than I should have because I felt guilty about, like, wasting something. And that can go for consumer goods, that can go for relationships, that can go for anything, but part of incompatibility, I think, is just recognizing that something doesn't have to be bad or completely irrelevant to anybody or toxic to not be right for you right now. And so a lot of growing is just letting yourself grow apart sometimes, and that's scary. It's scary to not think that something will be with you forever, but I've had relationships that I grew very much apart from, and then we kind of wove back into each other's lives at sometimes years later. And if you're going to be relevant to each other, that's going to happen. And you have to let yourself grow apart from those things that aren't serving you in those moments in order to reach that higher level of understanding, I think. So, I don't know who that was for, that just kind of came out, but that's just another thing that's been happening. But I think relevance has turned into this trap of clinging and needing things to stay as they are. And part of growth is death and falling away and recycling and reconstituting and composting and being something different next season. And part of our consumer culture, I think, has made such an enemy of death in any form, like the falling away, the cutting off, the natural evolution of things that into what we consider like a lesser state. Like, I'm a big believer that growth in a finite planet is, after a certain point, cancerous. And I think that can be true of relationships as well. And growth for the sake of growth. So I'm really trying to embrace fallowness and letting certain seasons of life be unproductive. Because that's when you're putting down roots. That's when the nutrients are getting reconstituted into something usable. In the garden, in ourselves. It's a necessary function of life. If you are constantly growing and extracting and there's no fall and winter where shit falls back and dies, you end up completely depleted, and the resources around you, if not the resources within yourself, are exhausted. And that is fundamentally unsustainable. And when you get to that point of unsustainability, then it creates this void that you have to fill with inputs, whether that's needing some kind of relationship or needing to buy something or to have a lifestyle to justify everything you've exhausted to get to this point. And sometimes you just need to put everything down and let what's going to fall off, and trust that you'll still be you, and you'll still have value, and you'll still be relevant to somebody somewhere at some point if you just let go. And so this is me just letting go. Showing up with, chin hairs and, 2-day-old outfit and my very imperfect dome, running my mouth with no rhyme or reason. I might put up a thumbnail if I'm feeling frisky, but, can we all just relax? Can we just let things be easy? Let things be organic? Let things exist as they might in nature, where we're not forcing things so much? I think we'd be a lot happier. And so that's what I'm going to try and do. You can take or leave it, but that's where I'm at right now. So 30 minutes seems like a good amount of time for a ramble, so I will let you guys go. Talk to you when I talk to you. Have a good one.